Which brings me to where I do have heartburn, and that would be number two there. And you know where I stand on this. I don't think that we should be a monopoly. I think, you know, the scenario that comes to mind right now is, imagine if for some reason we can't keep a good quality of any of our schools. And one of the things that I never thought about until now is that kids would want to get out of a school if we can't keep the quality. However, kids from families that are, I'll call it advantaged or affluent, they will have the money to take their kids out of their school. And it's the economically disadvantaged kids that cannot. We don't let them have any mechanism that would allow them to take their kids out of that school and put them in any other school. One of the things, and I brought this in the past, last year when we went through this, I would not be in favor of taking vouchers and giving them to schools that are not being held to the same criteria that we're being held to. So we're held to a certain criteria. If you want to have vouchers, if you want to take your money, the money that was, and it doesn't have to be 100%, and there are different formulas and different models for this, take it and take your kid to a school that does satisfy what you need. If we can't do that, I'm very confident that in PISD we will be able, we do have the right teachers and the right principals and everyone to keep the level of schools. But if we don't, we are causing a divide, because kids from families with money will be able to take them out, and kids from families without will not. I really don't want us to have, or at least to refine our position that says, no vouchers unless it's for a school that is being held to the same standards that we are.
Or if it's vouchers only for the schools that are not performing.
Add that too. Add that too.
I don't know. My opinion is to leave it as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think my position on this is well known, at least amongst the 7 of us board members as well. And this is where, Bjorn, you and I disagree probably the greatest on any issue. I don't at all want to open the door for vouchers. I think that taking state funds and putting them into private use, I think is a violation of the Texas Constitution. There's a Supreme Court case currently that will decide if the similar language in another state is constitutional or not under the U.S. Constitution. But beyond that, I think that taking public dollars and putting them into private schooling is not the proper use of those public funds. And so I disagree, and I would want to keep this as an absolute statement that we oppose vouchers in any form.
Here's where I'm coming from. I have to ask myself, do we represent the students who are currently in PISD or the students that can be in PISD? And I think that we represent the latter. We represent all students that can be in PISD, including those that can't find our schools or any of our schools, or can't find a program that they want to have, and there is another school that does provide that program. And we don't have any intention to offer a very specific program. Why not let them take them out? Why hold them?
There are financial mechanics around that, and that is an additional cost to the entire system. So if children, so the deal that is being discussed now is not a voucher, it's an education savings grant. And there is no accountability and no transparency associated with that right now. So the mechanism that you're describing doesn't exist in that form. But the form it does exist in is called a charter school. And any child has the ability to opt in to attend a charter school, and there is transparency and accountability for the use of public funds in those mechanisms. I represent Plano ISD. I don't represent other school districts. And in Plano ISD, I believe that we have choices where students can transfer between schools if they so choose. They could go to a charter school, and that is still a transparent use of public funds. For the children who are currently in private school, who you're describing now, there is no financial mechanism in the system today. We are not compensated for them. So if such a system were to occur, then the value associated with that student isn't funded to us now, so that's an incremental cost to the entire system to now take a funding and give it to them and let them use it for whatever choice they have. So that's a revenue, that's a whole additional cost to the system, and there isn't any transparency associated with that. I'm sorry, but I'm in a different camp on this issue.
And that's fine, but the fact that there is no system right now that has the accountability and transparency.
Charter schools do. Charter schools do.
Okay, other than charter schools.
So if a child is in a private school and they want a different, or they're in a public school and they want a different choice, they have that ability to make such a choice. They could even go to Grand Prairie where they have open enrollment and, you know, take one of their choice programs. I believe there are choices. Is every choice under the sun available? Probably not, but there are options, and I'm just in a different
My
place.
point is that instead of just having a blanket statement that says we're going to oppose this period and then call it a mechanism to privatize private education, how about if we define what are the boundaries of under which we're not going to oppose it? So I'm okay with the wording being we're going to oppose it unless, or we're going to oppose it if schools don't meet the same accountability and the same transparency requirements to the system. And if they don't, and if it does not, you brought a point of adding cost to the system, and if it does not add cost to the system, I just don't want it to be a blanket statement.
Well, you're asking us to negotiate against ourselves.
You what?
You're asking us to negotiate against ourselves because this board has a history of an absolute prohibition on vouchers. And so what you're asking us to do is then say, well, we know you oppose vouchers, and we had this conversation in the spring in a work session, in that we oppose vouchers, except here's some ideas that maybe we'll be okay, comfortable with. Well, we shouldn't be the ones proposing that. We're opposed to these vouchers. If somebody else wants to propose a system, that's fine. But I'm not going to negotiate against myself and start throwing out ideas that would be acceptable to me to let somebody else cherry pick that and say, well, you said you would do this. A. B. I stand by this statement. I'm opposed to vouchers. I'm opposed to privatizing the public school system, period.
I would just like to ask that if for some reason it appears that it's going to be passed by the state, I would like us to have some good talking points that we should have readily available and not just say we're opposed to this. I think we need to have a more meaningful dialogue, all the disadvantages that it can create with public ed. That's, you know, I'm opposed to it as what I know, as what I have been told by legislators when I ask them, you know, okay, you're gonna do this, you're just gonna throw taxpayers' money at whatever, and you're not gonna ask for any accountability. I'm sorry, that is totally fiscally irresponsible, period, regardless if it's in line with the constitutional or not. It is fiscally irresponsible to not have any accountability. So
I agree with you. I agree with you. What I'm saying is,
we know you're
let's say we will oppose it or we will not oppose it unless there is an accountability and transparency and now no added costs or whatever we decide the boundary. Here's what I'm afraid. At some point this is going to happen, and if this is going to happen, it's going to happen and not at our terms, it might not have the accountability. We may be giving them, here's the way to do. The way to do that is only if you enforce accountability and transparency, held them to the same standards. But at that point, you let a kid that we cannot provide an option to get another option.
right now, I want to help them use our people to help them figure out a better financing, a better way to finance public education. That's where I want to put all my eggs at this point. And I understand what you're saying, Jorn, but I support this statement as it is for now.
I appreciate your passion on this issue, but I don't think you're going to sway enough people to change it.
I was going to say, call to question.
So, any other comments about 6 and 7?
Not for me.
Okay.
Not because I decided not to, I just didn't have any of them.
Okay. All right, so all in favor, please raise your hand.
Would you clarify, all in favor with the changes made to omit
Thank you.
items 3 and 4?
All in favor of the presentation as modified? Thank you. Please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passes.